I usually don't speak with a microphone because I like to be connected to you guys, but I think it's very important that I wanna film this and I want to get the information and the images up, and I really do hope that you guys have some questions for me, um, because I would like to engage with what's on your mind as well. Um, but yeah, I'm Zach Smith. I know most of you, and it's really good to have you all here. And as Bryan was saying, something about connectivity and connections, I do feel a deep connection with my subjects, and I can't go on without saying the connection I'm feeling right now, being surrounded by my mentors' photographs, Herman Leonard, who you see in black and white all over here and in the hallway. I just honestly can say I would not be speaking right now if it weren't for the few years I had working with him. Um, if you don't know a lot of his work, well, go to the bathroom down this hallway and look at his work and look him up online. Truly a superstar in portraits and identifying with a subject and telling a story. And that's kind of what I want to talk about today, because as you saw on the online, if you saw what this talk is about, creativity and diversification, that's a very fancy word for saying putting all my eggs in different baskets, meaning taking the creativity that I have and using it in different formats to create a life for myself, to create a multitude of different creative outlets, whether it is fine art photography, which you may see in a gallery or a book, which is also commercial portraiture, which could be for a company or business that is online that creates content, event photography, also education in workshops that I teach, and using that diversification to still fuel my creativity. But the bottom line that connects all of those aspects is the storytelling nature of the photography that I do. And I really feel that, how many people here are photographers who take pictures? Raise your hand. A bunch of people. So we all know that all we have with a camera is a box, is a computer, or it's a black box if it's film that intakes light and records light. That's really all it is. And really, anyone can figure that out. But what I try to do with the camera is to relate a story of the person that I'm photographing to someone that needs to know more about them, their backgrounds, their life. And when I get hired to photograph musicians like Helen Gillet, I try to tell the story that my client wants to tell about her music, about her creativity, but I also try to tell a little bit of my story. It's called my one for you, one for me approach to photography, where I'm going to give you what you need, but I'm also going to find an angle that I see that I can tell another story that may be a deeper layer to what we're talking about. So I don't want to talk too much in the beginning. I do want to show you some images. I have a slideshow here of the photography of what I call where I'm at right now, which is I think it's a healthy blend of environmental portrait, commercial work. So I'm going to go through these images right here, and if I see something I want to talk about, I'm just going to stop it. Okay. So as I said, a lot of this is my commercial work, but it's also to promote a lot of the work I do with local New Orleans musicians in promoting their work, but also creating unique portraits for them that help tell their story. you didn't know anything about what you were looking at, you can kind of figure it out when there's musicians in the shot. But when you're seeing something like this, it's a pretty picture. It does tell a story about, this is a very comfortable person in nature, but it's not where you would put the jazz singer Cindy Scott. And a lot of images that she uses, it has been very headshot, lit well, and we decided to kind of veer away from what you would normally do for a jazz singer. Get barefoot and get balance very carefully in a tree in City Park. So that's the kind of stuff that I like to do, is kind of push the envelope of what people would feel is their comfort level, but also get what they want. So we got the headshot, but we also got something what I think is very creative, and it's not done a lot. So my path to where I'm at right now, a lot of those images you saw are fairly new. Didn't start in portrait photography. I started photographing street photography. I was a writer first, and I started seeing things that I could not write about. The words didn't come. I meditated about it. They still didn't come to me, and I picked up a camera, and I was able to tell that visual story and relate that story to others in a way I could never do it with writing. And I did mostly street photography. Street photography as a fresh learner of photography is a very good outlet, because you don't need to be engaging if you don't want. You don't need to be in control of the situation, which when you're learning your camera, you're usually not. You're at the mercy of life as it's happening. So with the few settings you have, you just, walk around and document your surroundings, and that's what I did. Street photography brought me around the country, photographing different cities, telling the story of wherever I would land. And when I moved to New Orleans in 2000, I just started getting into live music documentation. I was a musician first. I've been playing drums since I was 15. So the language of music, I thought, was another deeper layer in being able to tell a story, especially someone's story if they're a musician. So it was another language that I could speak with people. So I felt very comfortable around musicians and them around me, so I started to do a lot of live music. And a couple of years go by when I'm in New Orleans, and I have the honor of being able to work with the great Herman Leonard, as I said earlier, who really combined those two things that I had been doing, but not quite portraiture just yet. He had the relationship with the musicians. He knew the music, but he created the story in portraiture that also had a soundtrack. If you look at his images, you hear the music. And as photographers, in essence, what we're trying to do is take a three-dimensional reality that we can smell, we can see, we can feel, and tell that story to someone in a flat piece of paper. We're robbed of a dimension automatically. We're robbed of depth. We're robbed of sight and sound. And what I thought Herman did very well was create that depth for you by bringing you into the image deeper. You could hear the music. You could feel the humidity. You could smell the smoke, and you could see the sweat. So when working with him as his lighting person for 3 years up until the storm in '05, I learned that there was much more to photography than just being a witness and an observer, which I had done through street photography and live music photography. So I was just accepting what the world was giving me instead of controlling it. And I got very interested in using different lighting schemes, mixed lighting, natural light versus strobes and whatnot. It was very, very daunting for a while, but watching him do it really helped me cross that bridge. And as I started shooting more, I got comfortable with the lighting and the camera and the combination of how to tell that story with my subject. So as you see, that's kind of the place where I'm at now, but also what I'm trying to do is communicate better with my subjects. As long as I do that, I can get that story, that deeper story, out in the image even more. You know, to talk a little bit more about diversification, so what I'm essentially doing is taking documentary photography, portraiture, working with different types of lighting schemes, and applying that to any type of client work that I get, any type of portraiture, event photography. I'm taking those skills learned from the beginning and applying that to what I do. But since a lot of what I do right now lives online, that's pretty much where the market is driving content for just strictly online. You know, they're born and they live on a backlit screen. I don't come from that world. I come from the darkroom. I come from printing. So again, I put that another one of my eggs in that basket, being from the world of shoot for the wall. Like, if I'm going to take a picture, I'm going to put it on the wall, because the only way that we as photographers can show others how we saw an image is by showing them in the light we saw it. Does that make sense? Light is falling on that print, and when we saw that subject, light was falling on the subject. Where's the light coming from here? It's coming from behind. That's not the way I saw it. So, you know, it's definitely a philosophical question there. It's like producing this work that lives online, lives with light shining behind it. It's not the way I saw it. So, you know, it's a saying that I have 1 foot in the swamp, meaning I have 1 foot in film and 1 foot in digital, and 1 foot in creating these images that are meant to be printed but live online. So through the last decade and a half of juggling those situations, I've realized that there's a lot of information and a lot of knowledge I can share. So another basket that I have is a workshop series that I started, and also my educational series. I teach what I know. I teach documentary photography. I teach portraiture. I teach mixed lighting. I teach long exposure nighttime photography to people through a workshop series that I have. So through my educational workshop series, I'm combining the stuff that I've learned from day one to pass that on, as those before me have passed on to me. I can't think for a second that all the knowledge that I've gained ends with me, because if I don't give it away, I don't fully understand it. I think that whenever I'm talking to you guys right now, I'm just starting to understand things already, just because I'm saying it, you know. So I do want to go into a next phase, what I call kind of goes on diversification. When I'm shooting an event, I'm a staff photographer for Jazz Fest, the Jazz and Heritage Foundation, and Jazz Fest, and also the French Quarter Fest, which allows me a very unique insider's perspective on the music industry, on one of the largest free festivals in the country, and Jazz Fest, which we all know is an amazing machine, as it is a cultural gem that we have. And I'm able to see things from a different perspective while also getting the images I need from who I work for. I try to get something for myself. So that 1 foot in the swamp approach, right? Trying to tell a story in one image, that's really hard to do. But if you go back to what I was saying, and as a photographer, we're trying to create depth, and we really are trying to be magicians by creating depth where there is no depth in a flat image. So we try to use the background as a story line to where we are and let the foreground be your subject, if that's the way it works out. So in live music photography, um, you're an observer, but you're also a storyteller in the essence of portrait work, documentary work, and I love what I do when I shoot live music. I love being able to forge relationships with musicians, and like Juan Pardo and Little Freddie King, these musical and cultural torchbearers here, the people who are continuing the legacy of music and the unique culture blues has or New Orleans has. And actually, the mayor can blow. He's pretty good. He's pretty good. So the one for me, one for you thing, if I see some musicians that I know at a festival or around, I will try to line up some sort of portrait. And this is a band, Sweet Crude, and they always color coordinate what they're doing. So it's like they're an easy target for, hey guys, get together. They kind of know what to do, you know. So this is the one for me thing. So if I see musicians who are proud of what they do, they are energetic, you know, they're gonna want to take a picture. So I try to line some things up. But maybe that kid in the middle didn't really want to take a picture. It's like Curtis Pierre, I think his name is, amazing percussion player, Casa Samba. This is another one for me right here. Now the festival is not going to use this. This doesn't say, come to French Quarter Fest. So one term that we use like on the inside at Jazz Fest is that it never rains at Jazz Fest. Because you'll never see a photo of it raining at Jazz Fest. Anytime you've seen people playing in the mud, that's not done by one of the 3 official photographers. It's done by someone else, because those just don't go up. So this is an image that would not go up in a festival sense of come to this rich cultural music festival. It's going to be dark and dreary and rainy. No, but when I see something like this, I have to shoot it. I have to tell this story because it's a part of it. And this is one I shot. French Quarter Fest opens the festival with this big second line that goes right down the middle of Bourbon Street. It's pretty amazing. And there's so many layers to that one story. So, you know, if there's a second line, there's a third line and a fourth line and a fifth line. I call this my third line right here. There's always a different way to see something we always see every day. But we have to train our eye to look for it. You know, we got to look beyond the music and the instruments, and there's some other things in there. So this is kind of something. This is one for me. I don't think French Quarter Fest would ever use this. If they will, great. But you know, for me, this is the beginning of possibly a new series that I could do of like a third line photography of the images that happen at a second line that you don't normally see. Okay, it goes right to Jenny. Another basket that I've really enjoyed putting my eggs in is the commercial world. So using photography to sell a product, to sell a business, to sell a someone's view, sell music, sell clothes, to relay a message. Still keeping my one foot in the swamp. Any image that I'll do for these commercial clients who want a certain thing, I have to have a piece of me in there, because then I'm just using my camera to make money. And to me, that sounds ridiculous. This camera right here is gonna pay the bills or pay the rent. I've never really thought that way about photography. Without that camera, I'm not sure I'd know what to do with myself, with my life. So that camera for me is a mode of expression and a reason for me to even be alive. So I don't equate that with making money, but in the commercial world, you know, that's kind of what it equates to in a lot of ways. But I have to have a little bit of something for me. So I have a few commercial images here I want to show you. Where if you look at them, there still are ways to create a very in-depth, layered story. So that was for St. Charles Vision. That was a really fun photo shoot. I still have fish from that shoot right there. That was a fun shoot right there. Let me stop right there. This was an honor to work on this job right here. The Louisiana Philharmonic Orchestra is coming back home to the Orpheum Theater, which was their home pre-Katrina, so it's taken 10 years for the LPO to have the Orpheum as their home base, and I was really honored to get this client to tell that story of No Place Like Home, and to be able to use the still destroyed and still under construction Orpheum. As you see in that middle picture to the right, that guy didn't stop working, and we're photographing this cellist in the front of him in order to juxtapose the musicians in their coat and tails and their very expensive instruments amidst this rubble and decay, but also rebirth. It was a wonderful way to exercise all the things I'm telling you right now. It was a great thing. But you see these images laid out with type. It really gives it a totally different life to what my intentions were. You know, I could see these images printed big, you know, and maybe this could be a pitch I make to the LPO later. Like, hey, we did a great job with this. That conference room you have is looking really bare. Maybe we could print a couple of these large and put it in there. That was the case for French Quarter Fest, where they have this new conference room, and they ended up printing some of my aerials and some of my street shots really, really big in their conference room, and I got to go in there and sign them and stuff, and that was the circle completing itself for me, being able to see my images on a wall with light shining on them. And you know, I could have really waxed about that to them, but I didn't. You know, I was very honored, but it was a really cool thing to see. This was for Whole Foods, Whole Cities. I think this is the most favorite picture that I've ever taken, according to my wife. She loves this image. One of my clients, very fun client to work for, it's Crude Optic. They make these sunglasses. So it's how do we include Louisiana? So, well, we go to the swamp, and we bring some beautiful women and some Bolex 8mm cameras and go into the middle of the swamp and have fun with it. Okay, and that goes back to where we started right there. So I also have a few images of some street work, just to show you a little bit of where I started. Street photography for me is something I don't do as much as I used to, and it's a time factor. I don't have as much time to get out there on the streets as much. That's actually where I met Stanley, right there, with Prince of Wales, Social Aid and Pleasure Club. So a lot of people that I've met through my photography, I still form friendships with, but it's a timing thing. As probably Pat knows, getting out there is hard to do, but being on the street, you're able to document the world around you, especially in New Orleans. It really pops out in front of you, and I don't want to say it's hard not to take a good picture, but you really get some good stuff. So my job was to create a different layer. I felt that, okay, if it's easy to get a good picture out here, where's that next story? So it's Juan Pardo's kid with his pregnant wife putting on the headdress at Mardi Gras morning, showing the lineage of Mardi Gras Indians. That to me was a third line picture that I took. and a lot of my relationships with the musicians on and off stage. This is the Young Pinstripe, who I do their promotional photography for. And Bruce Degrapont, who I've never worked with until most recently at a meeting at his house, he asked if I would help him create an image for an album cover that he's doing. And I was honored because that's the way, in my mind, a long time ago, that I wanted this to play out. So I photographed the musicians on the stage. We become friends, and they hire me to do creative stuff. You know, best laid plans, but sometimes it works. Sometimes it works. Lost Bayou Ramblers, a group I've been working with for a long, long time. Iguanas, I'm also doing their promotional stuff as well. And I didn't talk much about this, but when I first came to New Orleans, I was probably shooting live music 5 or 6 times a week. Tipitina's Shim Sham Club, which is now One Eye Jack's, the Circle Bar, everywhere, and that was a really joy for me. But the nights were too late, the mornings were shot, so my life kind of shifted to the daytime festivals. So I do miss nighttime, so I had a chance to shoot this group over at the Republic, and it was fun because I hadn't shot nighttime stuff in a long, long, long time. And of course, they had a great light show, so it was easy for me. This is Phantogram. Is that right? Yep, Phantogram. It's a group. They're actually shining light on her dress, which is made of mirrors, which is creating that effect, which is really cool. So some more street photography. This is part of that second line. And then, again, that one thing of knowing the musicians you're photographing, you will get them cutting up for you, which in this case, this is the guy I was in my first band ever as a sophomore in high school. We were in the pep band at St. Thomas More High School in Lafayette, and he was a piano player, Eric Adcock. He's the younger brother of C.C. Adcock, which is a popular blues rock musician. And I played drums. Stacy went to school with Stacy. I just remember him coming to band practice. So we were learning, like, don't get around that much anymore. We were learning these old jazz. We were talking about standards earlier. We were learning these old jazz standards to play at pep rallies. And we'd play some Rush. We'd play some Black Sabbath. But Eric would always come to class with this riff. And we'd be like, what are you doing? What is that? He's like, that's long hair, man. That's long hair and Booker. And we're just like, look, if it isn't Lee Leifson or Pert or Ozzy Osbourne, we don't know what you're talking about. I mean, you're 14, 15 years old. You don't know who James Booker is. But this guy did. And it was just so cool that our lives have taken these paths. And he's a great piano player, plays with Lil Buck Senegal and most notably Roddy Romero in the Hub City All-Stars. And he's on stage at French Quarter Fest hamming it up for me. And this probably lasted like 45 seconds, which is a long time. When you're on stage photographing, there's a song going on, and he's just like, you got it? You got it? He's saying you got it through that smile. I'm like, wait, my flash wasn't right. And like, it's just taking me a little while. But this image is used more and more and more than I've seen from any image that I've shot at a festival, because it really says, come here, we're having fun, And it was that relationship that I had with him. So this was a really good full circle type situation. Some Mardi Gras Indians. It's a fun moment. This is another client, Sweet Crude, who I've done a lot of work with. So they're comfortable with me. I'm comfortable with them. But just so happened that the Natchez blew its steam as they were playing, which was great. And I've done a lot of work with Pres Hall Brass, which is a unique opportunity for me to get to just be close to that history of Preservation Hall. Just to be in the room with the guys is something special. I mean, if you haven't been there, go tonight. Shows at 8, 10, and 11. It's been amazing knowing these guys and being able to photograph them and having them comfortable with me being around. Okay. And so I wouldn't be anywhere without keeping that storytelling tradition alive in what I do. I have to do what got me into photography in the first place. I don't see myself evolving as a photographer using the camera to pay the bills. I don't go get that kind of work. The work I get, the work I put out there is the stuff that makes me, in my heart of hearts, happy and content. And I have to keep doing that. And I always have a few projects that I never close the door on. There's one project that I have called, what is it called? Exit Stage Right. I was trying to think. Exit Stage Right. It's an ongoing project of photographing musicians at music festivals. So I've got the music festival live stuff that I do for French Quarter Fest and Jazz Fest, but I also am interested in telling that story beyond it. So at Voodoo Fest, Chaz Fest, which is in the Bywater, and the Wednesday in between Jazz Fest weekends, I've done this project at Festival Acadian, at Geronimo Festival in Lafayette. Voodoo Festival, I did it from 2008 to 2012, and Chaz Fest 07 to 2015. And what that does is it allows me to photograph these musicians and people. Let's see. In a very relaxed light. So what I like to do is create a quiet moment for people in the midst of a loud, big festival. And this was some images at Chaz Fest, where I put a simple backdrop, shoot mostly 4x5 film. Most of the stuff I do at these festivals is film, because I feel shooting film allows me to slow down. And when I slow down, I ask better questions. I get more in touch with the people I'm photographing. Digital to me kind of makes my heart rate go up a little bit. I'm shooting faster. I'm shooting more. The instant gratification is a little, it's seductive. You know, you want to shoot a lot really fast. So shooting film, not only is one piece of film cost me $5 to $8 every time I press that button, it allows me to slow down and compose my subjects. So you get a different, not only a different feel from the image, a different feel from the subject, because they see you with this big camera and they realize that this shit's serious. This is serious. I better act right. Be myself. And you're going to see some familiar faces of people that I've photographed through the years, because New Orleans is a small city, you know? That's why I say, you know, do good work and be nice to people, especially here, because it comes around. And the fun thing about these festivals is that people know that I'm there, and they come find me. And this is, I think, is his go-to face right here, because I've gotten that face before. We're going to keep it in this program because it doesn't want to do anything. So you see the backgrounds kind of stay the same. So each year I'll have a different background. This is when I had just a white backdrop at Voodoo Fest. And I'll keep them very, try to keep them very simple. This is an image that I really love. This is what I call my Louisiana family tree. This is the Lost Bayou Ramblers, Preservation Hall, and the Givers. Rock, trad, jazz, and Cajun, all under an oak tree, which is a very, very classic way to do a album cover for Cajun music. I mean, 9 out of 10 Cajun album covers, you're going to see an old dude with an accordion sitting near a tree. And I just thought we would recreate that. This was another year right here. This was a fun shot right here. This is Cyril Neville, Dr. John, Irma, and Walter Wolfman, which is, every once in a while you get a chance. It's like to photograph these 4 people at a festival at one time. It's very rare because they each do their own thing. They're only there for a certain time. They're not there to hang out. And to have them all in one place was a very unique situation for me. And there's about 40 people with cell phones right on the edge of this frame, which was just wild. We know that's Anders. He's not unnamed. So I try to keep it simple and just let the people speak for themselves. So that was exit stage right. So the most current project I have, and I'm almost wrapping this up, which keeps me involved in all the aspects of photography I love, is called My Louisiana Muse. And I have a bunch of media online that tells a story about it. I have a blog, I have a website. You can pick up a card there. But My Louisiana Muse is a documentation of what inspires Louisiana artists, basically in a nutshell. That's what it's about. And what I'm doing is I'm teaching myself. I'm learning through the people who are creating unique, original artwork through dance, sculpture, photography, writing, poetry, painting, on how Louisiana inspires and affects them, how Louisiana is their muse. And I'm traveling all over the state, photographing these people using large format 4x5 film, and photographing them in places in Louisiana that's close to them, that inspires them in their story, which thus allows them to produce the artwork that they do. And what I'm doing is the final process of the image is going to be a Broom Oil photograph, which is what you see here. This is an older series I did in 2004. The Broom Oil photograph, it's a post-production process, an alternative process, as you call it, that involves bleaching the silver emulsion out of a traditional fine art black and white print to get a ghost image, and a re-inking of whatever color ink you choose back onto that print, thus the ink soaking into the emulsion that was once there. It's a process that I learned from a photographer named Radha, who I used to teach with at the Fine Art Academy of New Orleans on Magazine, which is where I still teach. And he taught me this process, which just blew my mind, that there was another layer of storytelling yet to an image once it was done. Once you finish the black and white image, it's done. But no, in a post-process world, it's not done. I mean, this was before I got into digital, so this was pretty eye-opening for me. So that's the process I'm going to give to the My Louisiana Muse photographs, so that I can become inspired by what I'm seeing from the artist, and I can then, I guess, tell the story that I get from the image. So I'm going to be using different types of inks, all printed 16 by 20. And the show is going to be at the Jazz and Heritage Foundation Gallery on Rampart in September. I'm really honored to have the work up there, showing on a wall where you can see it the way I saw it. So a couple of images here. This is one I photographed in New Orleans in 1998. The beautiful thing about the Broom Oil is that once you've done one, it's a unique, original image. You really have to be an expert badass to be able to do that exact same process twice. If you can, there's few people who can do that. If they're doing that, they're a master at what they do. The process is, there's so many variables from the print to the wall that can be altered, from the temperature of the water to the how you lay on the ink and where you lay on it. But as I've said, in 03, 04, I was shooting a lot of music and street, so my Broom Oils reflected that. But in this project right here, I'm photographing these artists all over the state, And this right here is Ashley Michaud. She's the wife of Louis Michaud from the Lost Bayou Ramblers, but she has her own blog called Prairie de Femme, the Prairie of Women, which in surrounding area of Arnaville, Grand Coteau, there's this culture that they have women artists, and there's a lot of Mary grotto statues everywhere. She explores that. So these are all her Mary statues in this field behind her house. All these images right here are shot digitally to help tell the story, but in all the digital shots, I did what I always do, one for me, one for you. I've got my digital shot that I back up with film. So in all these shots, I have the film version of it. The Melissa Bonin artist, this is in Lake Martin. Brian LaFay, he's a Lafayette artist. Michelle Verisco on the banks of the Mississippi. Adam Morales, which is also known as the Driftwood Man. He collects driftwood out in Pierrepont, Louisiana, and creates sculptures out of them because they tell him what they are. And he's one of those like divinely inspired, self-taught artists that you meet once in a lifetime. And I've probably been to his house, half a dozen times, learning from him to get to a comfort zone where I can tell his story the right way. If I just went there one time, I would not be doing him or you justice in telling his story. I'd be taking snapshots. I wouldn't be making photographs. This is him in his backyard, all his driftwood. Louis Michaud and his father, Tommy Michaud, a long lineage of Cajun musicians, playing in Tommy Michaud's father's backyard, Papa Lou Michaud, who I was born in the house across the street from this house, so this image has a very strong tie to my childhood and where I'm from. This is in Pilette, Louisiana. This is Louisiana Poet Laureate Darrell Bork. Danny, you know Darrell, amazing poet. He's has a few books out. His latest one is all about Amédée Ardouin. It's a beautiful. If I ever cease to love, I forget what the other title is, but it's about this Cajun musician Amédée Ardouin. He also has a book called Megan's Guitar, and writes a lot about Louisiana, its ecosystems, its swamps. Amazing poet. And Juan Pardo, who I have yet to photograph yet. This is an older image, but Golden Comanche, spy boy to soon Big Chief, who's passing on the lineage of what he does to his family in telling the story about the culture of the Mardi Gras Indians. So, that's kind of all I have right there. And what I wanted to do is just look at pictures, because looking at pictures is great, right? But also kind of tell you where I come from in my images and where I'm at now, and open up this part to dialogue. If anybody wants to comment or have a question on anything, hopefully I can channel something and